Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 963, November the 20th, 2019, Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, well, as it is Wednesday, that is the day that I have some chicken and take out the trash. Every Wednesday, I have chicken and I take out the trash. That's what we'll be doing this evening. But before I get to that, let's go ahead and cover the news of the day. And there's a lot to cover. First of all, once again, another epic opening statement by Devin Nunes, man. These are absolutely golden. They should go into the Congress Hall of Fame for opening remarks. And you know what's even better is if you can get the long shot where you actually get to see Nunes while he's doing his opening statement, and you can see Schiff, the bug-eyed fool, sitting right next to him, watching Schiff as Nunes is going through and doing his opening statement and just destroying the Democrats, the media, and the Inquisition, and Schiff himself. The look on Schiff's face, he just sits there like he's a wax figure. He doesn't move hardly, just stares out into space, and he's got the bug eyes working. He's got them bug eyes working, and it's just hilarious to watch as Nunes is just ripping it up and just looking at Schiff's face as Nunes is doing it is absolutely classic, and it should certainly go into the Congressional Records Hall of Fame for opening statements. So yes, Nunes is annoying the hell out of the pencil neck geek, the bug-eyed fool Schiff, and at the same time just destroying his entire Inquisition. And he was putting it on the media pretty hard, and the Democrats as well. So once again, Devin Nunes, these opening statements of the last three hearings have been absolutely epic. Not only that, but in the hearings that we had today, and I will be speaking about Tuesday, Nunes, Jordan, Ratcliffe, Stefanik, those are the main ones I watched. I didn't get to see them all, but those are the ones I watched, all of their questions. And man, oh man, they did a fantastic job. They just destroyed Vindman, absolutely destroyed Vindman. And then Volker and Morrison, they didn't even have to help them. Morrison and Volker, I mean, they literally, in my mind, after the Volker-Morrison testimony, this thing should be over. And Morrison definitely destroyed the credibility of Vindman, and as did Volker. So you can see that this thing is going off the rails fast. And at this point, you know, if this continues on and we get 2 more weeks of this type of debauchery, I'm not so sure that when they go to have the vote for impeachment that they find the votes. Because it's going to be awfully hard for 218 Democrats, particularly those 50 or 55 or so that are in red districts Trump won. It's going to be very, very hard for them to vote for impeachment. Now they got arm twisted into voting for this inquiry, which is what we're looking at now. But based on what a train wreck this has been, if something doesn't occur in the next 2 weeks that turns this around for the bug-eyed fool, and I think we're seeing the best witnesses he's got right up front, and they are literally destroying the Inquisition itself. I mean, why Schiff brought these people to testify, I don't know. They're helping Trump and the Republicans. I have no idea why Schiff would call these people because they're doing more damage. Volker and Morrison did more damage to the Inquisition and to the bug-eyed fool, you know, than the other witnesses that Republicans have been questioning prior to that. I mean, it's just a disaster. And so I'm wondering here in about 2 weeks if this trend continues and it comes time to have the impeachment vote. And I think they're going to try to have the impeachment vote probably just on the eve of the release of the IG report. If it continues this way, I'm not so sure they're going to get the 218 Democrats. They'll have to twist their arms really hard, and a bunch of them will be, you know, pretty much committing political suicide. And I don't think they want to do that. So I bet there's a lot. I bet behind closed doors right now within the Democratic caucus, there's a lot of very, very nervous and frustrated Democrats who know that they're going to be pressured here in about 2 weeks to vote for impeachment. And after what they're witnessing in these hearings, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to do that, assuming that the wheels even stay on this thing, because it's going off the rails fast. So just another bad day for the pencil neck geek, Adam Schiff, and his Inquisition. Another bad day, and this may have been the worst day of all, especially for his star witness, Vindman, whose own boss is saying, hey, this guy, we think he's leaking stuff. Nobody really trusts him. We don't think he understands the issue. We're keeping him out of the loop. And, I mean, this is not good. And Vindman's testimony himself, like I said, Jordan, Nunes, Ratcliffe, Stefanik, I mean, they just blistered him. Unbelievable. And, of course, Kurt Volker, in his testimony, said that he was not aware of any effort to urge Ukraine to investigate Biden. And he was asked that question on both ends by the one Republican from Ohio, Mike something or other, who's on the Intelligence Committee. He asked Volker, are you aware of were you aware that there was some sort of a deal where the Ukrainians had to investigate Biden or the 2016 elections or Burisma in order to get the aid or to get the weapons or to get anything? And Volker's like, no, I wasn't aware of any of that. And he said, now, as far as you know, on the other end, to the Ukrainians that you were working with, did they give any indication that they were aware that there were any of these types of deals? And he's like, no, this never even, conversation never came up. I don't believe anyone was aware of that. And as far as I know, it doesn't exist. And that's it. That's the whole case. That's the whole case. As Jim Jordan and Stefanik and Ratcliffe and others have already laid out time after time after time. It's just, you got to wonder, what in the world is the bug-eyed fool digging for? Because there's nothing there. And this thing's going off the rails. If it lasts another 2 weeks, I'll be surprised. And if they find 218 Democrats to vote for impeachment, you're talking about political suicide for at least 40 to 50 Democrats, I would say. So they're essentially giving the Republicans the House of Representatives. That's what these hearings are actually going to result in. These hearings are going to result in the Republicans winning back the House of Representatives. Now, I think Pelosi probably knows this, but she's probably willing to do it if it will get rid of Trump. But I think this is actually helping Trump. In fact, just 2 days ago, I reported to you that Trump's approval is up either 2 or 4 or 6 points, depending on which poll you look at. But even the worst of those 3 polls being up 2 points, the fact that he's up at all should be a problem for Madam Botox and the bug-eyed fool. They were supposed to drive him down, but he's going up. And at the same time, they're essentially, if they force 218 Democrats to vote for impeachment, they are essentially turning over the House of Representatives to the Republicans, assuming that the Republicans, know how to run a campaign, which we all have our doubts, but we'll see. Should be like taking candy from a baby. Well, the Democrat activist who threw the slushy at Matt Gaetz has been sentenced. She is going to get 15 days in jail for lobbing that slushy at Matt Gaetz. Good. I think that's a fair sentence, about 2 weeks. You shouldn't do any major time for throwing a slushy, but, you don't want to get in a situation where members of Congress cannot go out into the public and talk to their constituents or talk to people in town without being assaulted with God knows what. And, it starts out with a slushy, and where does it go from there? Battery acid? I mean, you just can't let you can't let the precedent be set that that's something that's tolerated. You can't do it. Well, you shouldn't be able to do it to anybody. I mean, if you're standing in the marketplace talking to your buddies at the Marktplatz, and someone just walks up and lobs a slushy at you, that's pretty much an assault. You know, you're not really allowed to do that. And there should be some sort of a penalty. And I think 15 days is adequate. That's enough time for that person to sit there for 2 weeks and think about what they did and why it was stupid and shouldn't do it again. And hopefully others can watch and say, uh-oh, I don't think I want to do that because this person got 2 weeks in jail. And that's why you do it. So, well done. Probably it sounds like we had a reasonably fair and decent judge ruling on the matter. Now we have Paul Sperry reporting that NSC officials attempted to remove Vindeman due to security concerns, but were blocked by an Obama holdover, an official in the White House who still controls human resource management inside the NSC. This is an African-American woman who is being reported as being close and closely tied to the Obama family. And her name is Letitia Lewis. Letitia Lewis, apparently working on behalf of the Obama administration, refused to remove Vindeman even after his colleagues brought up security concerns. She refused to remove him, and she is still there in the White House working for resource management. She should not be in the White House working for resource management for the NSC if she had these officials around Vindeman, including his two bosses, come forward and say, hey, we need to get this guy out of here. We think he could be leaking. We're pretty sure he's lying. He just shouldn't be here. And she overturns that decision based on the fact that it appears here that someone in the White House, the Obama White House, pressured her not to take that action. We need to find out who the Obama official was who told her not to take that action. Now, it probably goes pretty high up. And who would we be talking about here? NSC. We will be talking about Susan Rice, who's got a lot of problems. She's going to have a lot of problems, most of them legal. Well, it looks like the Department of Justice has released more Strzok page texts. Now, these particular texts came from some other format outside of the typical FBI email or even their own personal email. This was like a third-party email service that they were using, and they found that not only did they find these conversations between Strzok and Page about personal things, but they found that they were also talking about FBI business on this third-party email system, which is I don't know if it's a crime, but it's certainly a violation of department policy. But they violated a lot of department policies, and we shall find out more about that in the weeks to come. But the texts that everybody is focusing on from this recent release is these texts that show that Peter Ben Strokanus' wife found evidence of her husband's affair with Lisa Page, and she threatened to send the information to Page's husband. And Peter Ben Strokanus, or Mrs. Peter Ben Strokanus, Strzok's wife, left Lisa Page a voicemail. And Mrs. Strzok had discovered hotel reservations, records of flowers being sent, and photographs, selfies from Lisa Page, I imagine. Now, Mrs. Ben Strokanus threatened to hire a private investigator to investigate this. So she brought the heat on her hubby, Peter Ben Strokanus, and Lisa Page. Now, I even remember reading, this was back like a year and a half or 2 years ago, that at the time, Lisa Page was having issues with the husband and had moved out and was living with the McCabe's. And some were suggesting she was having some action with Andy McCabe as well. I don't know what kind of a freak show that they were running over at McCabe's place, and I don't want to know. Well, it looks like the prison guards in the Epstein-related matter, the two of them, two prison guards, I believe a male and a female, have been arrested and have been indicted, and it appears that they are going to plead not guilty. Now, the interesting question here is, why are they going to plead not guilty? Because they're being charged with falsifying logs. They're the two who fell asleep or didn't make their watches properly, didn't check on Epstein when they were supposed to, because they either just blew it off or because they were asleep. Now, but what they're really in trouble for, that's obviously a problem, but it's not, there's no criminal intent. But when you falsify logs, that is probably a criminal, and certainly the intent is there. So they are going to plead not guilty to that, and of course the question is, why? What's going to be the reason that they're pleading not guilty? Are they going to say that they just flat out did not alter the logs? Because if they did not alter the logs, who did? Or are they going to say that, well, they altered the logs, but they did it for a good reason? They were justified. Maybe because they were working too many hours, they were too tired to go make the watch, they couldn't make the watch because they were told to do something else. Could be a million other scenarios that they could paint to say, well, we wrote in the log, but people do that all the time. People write in the log that they made a check when they didn't, because it's just, we got to make the log sheet look good, but a lot of times they're having you do 8 different things at once. You can't do 8 different things at once, so you write in the log that you did the check, but then you went on and did some of the other things that you were told you had to do. So it could go either way. I don't really know. Now, my guess is that the government's case would probably be that they did change the logs. Regardless of why they did it, they did falsify in the logs. And I would think that because if the government's investigating and they see that these people have falsified the logs, they're probably going to investigate that and make sure. They're not going to take a guess. They're obviously going to check handwriting, check with other people, check with other log sheets, check with times, check with this, check with that. They're probably going to look into that pretty hard and see if there's possibility that someone else made log entries or, and for whatever reason that would be. But at this time, it doesn't appear that that's the case. They're just flat out saying that they, falsified the logs. So we will have to see as this plays out. But I think it's very interesting that these prison guards, there's something going on here, okay? Something is going on. Because these prison guards are not, they didn't take a plea deal that they were offered, which was apparently a very sweet plea deal. Because the government does not want these people testifying in court. They do not want to learn what these two people have to say, nor the other witnesses likely who will come and support them. They wanted this to go away very quietly, so they offered these two a sweetheart deal, a plea deal, because they just wanted to put this thing to bed. But it's just not going away, is it? In fact, now it appears that the Department of Justice has decided to further this investigation into the whole matter. There already was an investigation, and that's what you're looking at here, but it looks like there's going to be more of an extended, they're going to take the investigation deeper, I guess you would say, to try to find out what else is going on. Yeah, let's just put it this way. Everybody knows that the odds of Epstein offing himself in the way that he did, that we're told he did, I think is a very low probability. It's possible. I think it's possible, but I think the probability is very, very low. When you combine the probability that he could actually do it the way he did it, along with the other evidence that we have, which is that he was in a good mood, he was waiting for a court hearing to come up that might allow him to get out. There was no reason, according to his lawyers, that they could see, nor was he showing any demeanor that would suggest he was, planning on suiciding himself. Then, of course, we know about all the other things of the super powerful people who would have been damaged by him cutting a deal or testifying. And this is what everyone suspected would probably happen, and what blows everybody's mind is that it actually did. I mean, everybody knew it was going to happen, then it happens. That's a problem. So yes, there's a lot to look into. And do I think that we'll ever get the truth of this? I honestly don't. Too many powerful people. Too many powerful people to get the truth about this. Too many powerful people caught up in this. Prince Philip, the Clintons, too many people. Republicans, Democrats, all around the world. I mean, Epstein was hanging with some very, very lofty folks all around the world. Like the top tier of global elites is who we're talking about. These people are going to be protected. I can assure you of that. I would be very, very surprised if we ever get to the truth. Well, speaking of someone else who may be facing some danger, maybe putting herself in some danger, is this crazy left-wing female lawyer out in California, Gloria Allred. Gloria Allred. Let me tell you why she just put herself in some bit of possible danger. She's just taken on a new witness, a new client. Yes, she's taking on a new client, and that client is going by the name Jane Doe. Jane Doe is claiming via her lawyer, Gloria Allred, that, and she is a, excuse me, this is involving the Epstein case. She is claiming to be one of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. So Gloria Allred now has this Jane Doe who's claiming to be another victim of Epstein. And this Jane Doe is telling her lawyer, Gloria Allred, who is now making this public, that when she, Jane Doe, chose a seat on Epstein's Lolita Express, his jet, Epstein told her that the seat that she chose is the one that his good friend Bill Clinton always chooses to sit in. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That's a problem. That is a problem. Now, Gloria Allred is a hardcore left-winger, was probably a huge Clinton supporter, I would think. Probably loved Hillary, probably voted for her, most likely donated to her. The Right Reverend Clinton isn't going to like hearing about this new client that Gloria Allred has, making the claim that she chose a seat on the Lolita Express that Epstein told her is the one preferred by Slick Willie when he makes his trips on the Lolita Express. Boy. More bad news for the Clintons. Well, it looks like the Clinton Foundation is now reporting a $16.8 million loss in the year 2018. $16.8 million in losses. Now, the Clinton Foundation, when the Clintons were in power and the Right Reverend Clinton was running for president, they were making bank, taking in money by the hundreds of millions. But now, since the Right Reverend Clinton lost the election, since 2016, when the Right Reverend lost the 2016 election, the Clinton Foundation has reported over $30 million in losses. You see, when the Clintons had power, the Clinton donation was overflowing in money. But once the Right Reverend Clinton lost the election, they're now sucking wind and losing money at an alarming clip. Can you imagine losing $16.8 million in 1 year in your foundation? And in the last 3 years, having lost $30 million, that after you had been making hundreds of millions. What do you think changed? What do you think changed? Why did things suddenly dry up? Why suddenly does no one want to donate to this wonderful charity? And maybe now we know why the Rotten Reverend Clinton wants to run for president. Because when she runs for president, the Clinton Foundation makes bank. Sweden has dropped the rape charge against Julian Assange. Sweden has dropped the rape charge against Julian Assange. That's very interesting. Julian Assange is the only one who really knows who provided those emails to WikiLeaks. John Durham knows that. Bill Barr knows that. We all know it. Everyone knows it. You think maybe Mr. Durham may want to have a talk with Julian Assange and see if maybe he can work a little deal? Because if Assange can produce the evidence that it was not the Russians without giving up who it really was, if he can do that, and Dana Rohrabacher said that he can, then that could be a game changer. That could be a game changer. If Durham comes out and says, I've now seen the evidence that the Russians didn't hack the DNC, guess what? Wow. There goes the whole Russian collusion narrative. And then the only thing he has to figure out is, was it a mistake to believe that, or was it purposeful to plant a fake hack story? And who would have benefited from all that? The Rotten Reverend and the Democrats. See, my friends, this is why you should do the right thing every day. You shouldn't lie, cheat, and steal. It generally will not work out well for you. Many people get away with it for a very, very long time, but eventually things usually catch up to you. Uh-oh. Speaking of John Durham, the Atlantico, which is a newspaper in Italy, the Atlantico in Italy is reporting that John Durham is heading back to Italy. It'll be his third time. And you know why he's coming back to Italy? To meet with Joseph Mifsud. Durham is headed back to Italy to meet with Joseph Mifsud, according to the Atlantico. Atlantico. If you speak Italian, go over and take a look at it. And apparently this is going to occur in early December, shortly after the IG report is released. Why is that? Well, because it's very likely that after the IG report is released, there'll be no more reason for Mr. Mifsud to hide or to fear death or anything else, because now it'll be out. Now, as you know, I'm digging into the Lee Smith book, and one of the main reasons I bought the Lee Smith book was because I saw him in an interview where he started talking about these proto-dossiers. So that is chapter 4 in the Lee Smith book, the proto-dossiers. And I have really enjoyed reading that chapter because of all the things that we talk about on here in TowerGate and all the things that so far we've talked about from the Lee Smith book. A lot of it's not really new information. It's just reinforced with some new details. But this proto-dossier thing is something that nobody that I'm aware of had talked about or stumbled onto until Lee Smith's book came out. And that's why it perked me up, because I'm thinking, wait a minute, I've seen everything on Spygate. My timeline, it's full of stuff. It's every possible bit, fact that you could probably find that has anything to do with Spygate is in my timeline, or I've talked about it on a YouTube video. But this proto-dossier was something completely out of left field I'd never heard about. Now, of course, we've all discussed and talked about the fact that I've been saying for 2 years now that Christopher Steele did not write the dossier. That I believe that it was written by, I had said in the past, I think it was written by Confusion GPS, Glenn Simpson, and Nellie Orr, and probably getting some help from her good friend over in the UK, Mr. Baumgartner. And they probably did a lot of the stuff dealing with Ukraine and Russia and Eastern Europe and corruption and all that. And then you had the salacious stuff, the stuff about the PP-Gate story and all that, which probably came from Sater or, you know, one of these goons, or probably even could have been cooked up by Cody Shearer and the Hillary Clinton goons. That would be right down their alley, quite honestly. So we still haven't discovered who is behind that. We've had 3 or 4 people that we've talked about that seems could have been the source for the PP-Gate. But the stuff in the proto-dossiers wasn't about the PP-Gate story. It was all the other stuff dealing with Manafort, Carter Page, Ukraine, Russia, Alpha Bank, and all this type of stuff. That was all in these proto-dossiers. So these proto-dossiers, according to Lee Smith, is saying that just as I suspected, but now I suspected that the so-called Steele dossier was written by these people. But Lee Smith is saying that these proto-dossiers, of which there were 4 proto-dossiers, were authored by Confusion GPS, Glenn Simpson, Nellie Orr, and of course Baumgartner, Ed Baumgartner. And I knew Baumgartner was tied to Nellie Orr as part of the dossier because Nellie Orr was Baumgartner's teacher when she was teaching Russian studies. They both speak perfect read and write, speak Russian. Baumgartner works over in London. He does a lot of work for both Hackloot and Orbis Intelligence, the 2 private intelligence agencies, one connected to Halper and Alexander Dalmatch Downer, the other, of course, Christopher Steele's outfit, Orbis, and he does a lot of work for them. Plus, he does a lot of his own independent work. So I knew that from information we'd gotten probably, a year and a half ago or more, that Baumgartner was working with Nellie Orr in some way. So there we go. These proto-dossiers were likely authored by Glenn Simpson, Nellie Orr, and Baumgartner. So these proto-dossiers, of which there were 4, are essentially all the bits and pieces that would later make up almost everything that would show up in the so-called Steele dossier. And these things were being passed out all over D.C. and all throughout the FBI, the CIA, the Democratic Party, the DNC, the Clinton campaign. It was just like, keep away from the Republicans. They were the only ones, other than McCain and a few other turncoat anti-Trumpers. David Kramer, of course, is mentioned in one of these proto-dossiers. So these proto-dossiers, and obviously I don't have time to go into it. You need to buy the book or whatever if you want to really dig into it. But you can clearly see that as soon as the Rotten Reverend Clinton hired Confusion GPS back in April of 2016, within literally 2 weeks, the first proto-dossier shows up, and then the second, and then the third, and then the fourth, which came out on May the 20th. And this is the one that had a header on it that said, "Privileged, prepared at the instruction of counsel." Privileged, prepared at the instruction of counsel was the header on this particular May 20th proto-dossier. And that would indicate Perkins Coie, the law firm the Rotten Reverend Clinton paid to hire Confusion GPS and Christopher Steele and to do all this stuff. So clearly the Rotten Reverend Clinton and her campaign were personally and deeply involved with this whole process using Perkins Coie. They created these proto-dossiers. They spread them all over Washington, D.C., and the media circles. All the reporters had these proto-dossiers as early May 2016, and literally Lee Smith puts in there story after story after story after story. There must be 50, 60 stories that were written using the information from the proto-dossiers before the Steele so-called dossier ever hit the street. And it was all the same stuff. They had it all, and they had it long before the Steele dossier. Unbelievable. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. Have a good night. See you. Bye.